the high school football game of the week.
Listen, man, tonight is the night to make the name for yourself.
Not one, but two of the best games in the Triad every Friday.
All comes down to today.
Catch the action on WTOB 980 AM and 96.7 FM.
Who got my man? I got your man.
Or tune in to our second game on WCOG 1320 AM. Both games powered by TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com, your home for Triad Sports. Hey, Panther fans. Right now on the SiriusXM app, hear the most in-depth Carolina Panthers coverage anywhere with Believe in Carolina Panthers, part of the Believe podcast network on SiriusXM. Hear from me, Desmond Johnson, and my co-host, Skylar Callahan from Sports Illustrated, and Panther great Jonathan Stewart as we break down the Panthers before and after every game through the NFL season. Your team, your podcast. Search BLEAV in Carolina Panthers on the SiriusXM app, Pandora, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Do you believe? You are locked into Tobacco Road Sports Radio, your home for Triad Sports.
And you know this, man.
It's mid-July, so it's that time of the year again. The high school football schedule release show proudly brought to you, powered by Tobacco Road Sports Radio. I'm Desmond Johnson in the house with a packed house as we'll get you through the schedule reveal for the WTOB Forsyth County Game of the Week, as well as the WCOG Game of the Week. A few surprises along the way, a couple announcements along the way. From the Greensboro News and Record, Bryant Roche will join us here shortly to discuss some of the players he's been looking at here as we barrel down this hill all the way to August 18th. Friday, August 18th is the first official day. First games taking place all around the state. And as I bring in my beautiful panel here, JP Mundy, the voice of the Grimsley Whirlies. We'll talk a little bit about that just a bit in the house with us. Chase Williams, who is now the voice of Glenn High School. He'll be here with us, so we'll talk to Chase. And Mike Fanning, who's joined the Tobacco Road family. He will be doing color commentary for Grimsley, as well as some basketball and some other things in the spring. Gentlemen, how you doing? What's going on? It's the calm before the storm. What's JP, you wanna let these guys know what they're in for? Because I don't know if they know what they've signed up for yet.
This is it's officially football season. Don't get it twisted. It's football season. 7-on-7s are not only useless, it's over.
Yep, they're done.
Coaches are about to get back from the beach. Mini camp's about to happen. Josh McGee's about to run his first honey bun over at Reagan. It is football season.
There's some teams in this area too. A couple of teams. Some names we're pretty familiar with. They're usually at the top as we start a season, and as we roll through, they're back stronger, looking different, or looking almost exactly the same, but just a year older. And there's some new heavyweights that might pop up this year as well. Chase, you're going to be the voice of Glenn football and a little basketball this year. We hadn't really announced it yet, but people know that Brett Wiseman had been with us for a couple of years. He left to go to Carolina Thunderbirds, picked up a gig there. They, for some reason, I don't know why, released him, which put him back in the open market. He's back with the Tobacco Road family. He'll be doing some color commentary and producing with you over at Glenn. Chase, want to tell the folks a little bit about yourself and your background and everything?
Yeah, I'm super excited. Something I'm straight out of college, something I've done since high school. Love football, love basketball. Really excited for opportunity to tell the stories of these high school athletes and go around these games with you, especially Glenn on what hopefully is a bounce back season. You know, a little bit of a shaky year last year. Once bounce back into the playoffs and see what they can do. I'm excited. Just graduated down the road. I've been in the area for the past few years at Elon University, so I've covered some of the area sports. Did a lot of college sports, of course, and just really thrilled for this opportunity with Tobacco Road Sports Radio.
And Chase will have a show, Cut to the Chase, his podcast. That'll be airing on Tobacco Road Sports Radio here this fall as well. And then Mr. Mike Fanning, some of you might recognize his voice. He joined on with us in the spring, got some quality baseball in, called a few A&T games for me, as well as some East Forsyth games. Mike, what's going on, man? I know you've been, chomping at the bit to get to this part of the calendar.
Man, I tell you what, I am very excited. Just congratulations to you and what you've been able to accomplish in such a short amount of time, covering all these teams here in Central North Carolina. And boy, do we have a good one in Grimsley. I'm really looking forward to what they bring to the table. They're not going to jump up on anybody. They're not going to surprise anybody. They've been wearing the trophy of playing in that state championship game all summer long. It's time to put the cards on the deck and see what happens. So I'm really looking forward to covering Grimsley football this fall with JP. It's going to be a great season. It's a great time to be on Tobacco Road, and I really appreciate you having me.
And shout out to Athletic Director Ethan Albright over at Grimsley and head coach Daryl Brown of the football team for I had an idea, been kind of looking at them for a couple of years. Most people know my criteria in terms of the schools I approach to build a network for. Spoke to Ethan, we met, went through it, everything. He was a little tentative. He didn't know how the alumni and parents and stuff would react to something like this. And a couple days later, he called me back, was like, "Hey, let's go, let's do it." They want it, and they've been super excited about this going forward. Grimsley joining our high school sports networks along with East Forsyth and Glenn. Guys, let's just get right into it. Matter of fact, let's start off for those that maybe missed this, the announcement about the sports network for Grimsley. It's all football, home and away this year, as well as all home basketball, men and women. We may sprinkle in a little baseball and whatnot somewhere in the spring, although I know that situation's a little weird with Grimsley's baseball stadium. I think they're playing at the Grasshopper Stadium, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what Ethan told me. So that could be an experience in itself if we do some Grimsley baseball as well. But let's start off with the WCOG schedule. Grimsley, their sports network, with all those games being broadcasted by Tobacco Road, it will be on some terrestrial station in the Triad, but all of those games will be available online at tobaccoroadsportsradio.com live each week. So definitely join JP and Mike. They'll be there with you. If you're an East Forsyth fan, you're listening to East Forsyth, myself and Rod Funderburk, we enter our fifth season. Yeah, fifth season. Me and Rod have done East since 2018. So this will be year 5 of us.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, you know who Hot Rod is. Hot Rod Funderburk. I got to track him down. I haven't seen my guy in a couple months. So he's probably at the beach, smoking a cigar, just chilling, waiting for August to get here. But we'll talk a little bit about East Forsyth here in just a bit as well. The COG side is available to you on 1320 AM and 96.7. Oh, no, excuse me. I got the TOB one up. Let's just do TOB first then. So the TOB schedule is Forsyth County game of the week. And it's 96.7 FM and 980 FM. You can hear anywhere in Forsyth County. I know that site might be too small for some to read. I can't make it any bigger than what it is, but you'll notice that first opening game is actually JP and Mike up to bat. August the 18th, Grimsley at Mount Tabor. That game will be the Forsyth County game of the week on WTOB. We'll see why when we get to the COG side. August 25th, and I'll do this in batches of 3 or 4. August 25th, myself and Rod Funderburk have a drive ahead of us, along with Adam Delp, who comes with us to join, help broadcast these games. Jack Britt, which is in Fayetteville. So athletic director Alan Plaster putting the boys on the road the first 2 weeks of the year, which I guess makes sense because school has a late start this year. School didn't even start until after that week 2. So prepare for the stands to maybe not be completely full yet. Kids aren't in school yet. The kids actually start after that Friday on the 28th, if I'm not mistaken. So East Forsyth, week 2, taking on Jack Britt down in Fayetteville. So their first 2 games will be on the road. Week 3, East Forsyth's home opener versus AC Reynolds, an interesting matchup. AC Reynolds went pretty deep in the 4A playoffs in the Western Regional, the loaded Western Regional last year, before falling to, I want to say Weddington was the team that they lost to. Had a very stingy defense. I know some of those guys graduated, but stopping right there, initial impressions, first 3 weeks of the season on WTOB, Grimsley at Mount Tabor. I'll let the Grimsley crew discuss that one. Grimsley at Mount Tabor, head coach Daryl Brown trying to get his boys back to the 4A state championship, but they got to get through August 1st.
There's a few questions that are going to be answered, immediately. I think for Mount Tabor, if not Grimsley. Grimsley brings, a lot of the same players from last year's squad to the table, and they've got some guys who have all played good quality minutes. Mount Tabor has lost a lot, in my opinion, but it's going to be interesting to see how well they play with Snook Peterkin coming back, and finally, instead of like a 2 or 3-headed monster at running back, they've got Zion Thompson that that will be the starter unless something occurs or they've got somebody new that I'm not aware of. For Grimsley, I'm really looking forward to seeing how they utilize. Like my partner said, they're not going to sneak up on anybody. I think they know what the two wideouts can do in Alex Taylor and Terrell Anderson.
Yeah.
However, they can do so many things. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of scheme they put together.
Mike, your thoughts on Grimsley opening up on the road in Forsyth County against a Mount Tabor team that many people are picking probably to finish in the top 3 of the Central Piedmont Conference?
Yeah, I think it is a tough road test. I think it's a challenge. At least when I met with the AD and Ethan Albright, they were ready for. They were excited for, and they got that leadership back from a year ago in some key spots. I mean, they got that dude in Terrell Anderson. Mitchell Summers, 2,200 yards rushing last year. You got some guys you can rely on, but then you bring in Fazium Brandon. What's he going to look like at the quarterback position as a sophomore? So you got some guys you can rely on in this offense. Sprinkled in some new pieces. How it's all going to click. You're on the road. It's going to be a difficult test, but one that at least in these early conversations, as we're kind of getting summer wound up here, they were excited about. They were ready to go on the road. They're ready for the challenge. So we'll kind of see how the team comes together as we lead up to the Jamboree. But right off the bat, it's going to be a great game on the road.
I caught that vibe too while I was over there, and that's kind of what led me over there. People got to understand Grimsley was in a different place 5 years ago in terms of their football program. They were in the bottom of the bottom. They were getting kicked around by everybody. And when Coach Brown came in there and they redid the weight room and they rebuilt the JV and they did these things that other programs around the area have done and sustained. And to their credit, Grimsley has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger each year. Been to the state championship twice in the past 3 seasons. Won the spring 2021 season and then lost to New Bern last year. Although I haven't heard anything else about that. Wasn't it something where, well, I know they won't give it to Grimsley, but wasn't there something about an eligible player or something with New Bern like a month or so ago?
They've got a mess, and I checked today that New Bern still doesn't have a new head coach.
Yeah,
but they had around 50 seniors that they wouldn't let walk at graduation because they had not yet fulfilled their graduation requirements.
That's not good.
Not good. And their head coach is now over at Hillside. Hillside's head coach, some sort of just dastardly accusations there involving a potential raping of a student or something like that. I don't know what it is. It was bad.
Jeez.
So I good luck to the new coach at Hillside, but it's unfortunate most of all for those kids.
And that's the thing too that gets lost in the sauce a little bit, where it takes a lot of effort for a high school football program to consistently be good every year in North Carolina. There's only a handful really that come to mind. And when you say their names, people kind of already know, like Reedsville, Dudley, East Forsyth, and now Grimsley. You can put Grimsley into that batch where you kind of, no matter who the faces are, no matter what the names are on the back of the jersey, you kind of expect the machine to keep going. And again, we'll get to East in just a bit because they've had some changes across the board, not just in the roster, but in the coaching staff as well. You about to say something, JP?
I was gonna say that we've said the G word way too many times, and we're gonna get a text message from Captain Vacation Bible School himself. So.
I'm used to that. Oh, and actually, some news about East Forsyth, the Nest, with Todd Willard, the coach's show. That's actually entering season 5 as well, with Rod hosting that show. And we'll just announce it right here. That show is moving. We will not be at J. Peppers this upcoming season. We've yet again outgrown a venue. We will be at Monte Del Rey in Kernersville starting the week of August 18th. So I guess it would be the 15th will be the opening show. So make sure you guys come out to that. It's always live, 7:30. Rod Funderburk hosts. I'm producing, running music. It's a party whenever we do it. So we'll give you some news on the Grimsley coaches show as it comes in. I'll probably know more about that after Friday. So we'll be able to tell you where it's going to be and everything else. I'm sure they'll try to hype it up as much as that one. Chase will be hosting the Glenn coaches show, Deep Water, And that spot is to be determined as well. There's a couple of spots that are in the running for that. So watch out for our social media at Tobacco Radio on Twitter and on Facebook at Tobacco Road Sports Radio for news regarding that. Back to the schedule as we get to week 4. Week 4 was a weird week to schedule because yet again, that's kind of, I think is that a Labor Day weekend? The 8th? I think it is.
That's the weekend after.
The weekend after. So basically every school's on a bye September 8th. So I'm sitting there that's why North Davidson versus Walkertown is on here. There were two of the few schools that were still playing on that week. And actually Chase and Brett will be calling that game at Walkertown. The rest of us kind of get a week off before we start sledding into conference play, which begins the very next week. September 15th on WTOB 96.7 FM, 980 AM, Reagan at East Forsyth. That has actually become one of the bigger rivalries in Forsyth County over the past 2 or 3 years. Coach McGee has really built up that program out in Pofftown with D1 prospects all over the place. And then on September 22nd, Glenn will go to Reagan and take on Reagan, both of those Central Piedmont Conference games. It says flex beside it because at that point of the season, we may begin to flex other games into the schedule from here. But quick thoughts, guys, on that batch of 3 games: North Davidson at Walkertown, Reagan at East Forsyth, and Glenn at Reagan on September the 22nd.
The Reagan East Forsyth game, in my opinion, it's preseason, so it's all conjecture, but that's the CPC championship game.
You think? Yeah.
I think that's in other words, that's the best dudes on dudes matchup on paper. Okay, so before you start messaging me, Coach,
you gotta stop worrying about these coaches, JP. They're not going to touch you. They're not going to hurt you. They're fine. You're fine.
Yes, earlier. Have you met with these guys? No, I really think I'm not going to get much argument when it's from a pure dudes on dudes standpoint. That's the thing. And Josh McGee's had some success against the Eagles, and it, like you said, it has become quite the rivalry. What I'm out of that group of games you mentioned, though, I'm most excited, I think, to see what happens in that Walkertown North Davidson matchup, just because Walkertown's the type of program that loves inviting the big dogs in, the more established programs, Walkertown being a newer high school, and causing upsets. So that's a good stretch right there in September.
What I was going to add to that is luckily, JP, because I'm new to this, they don't have my phone number yet. So I don't have to worry about them per se coming and blowing up my phone. So I guess I got a little bit of wiggle room. But by week 4, you're going to kind of know what type of team you have. And that's where I think North Davidson might be an interesting look at, because if this is the same kind of North Davidson program that we've seen, in the last 4 or 5 years, they know how to play complementary football. They know how to play together as a team. They know what works and what doesn't. So by week 4, like you said, that could be one of those matchups. They're not afraid to play, hard physical football. And that, by week 4, you kind of know what you have, and that could be a tough game. That could be a very competitive game.
Chase, you mentioned earlier at the start that this was hopefully going to be a bounce back season for Glenn, kind of falling down a little bit last year after losing some top ranked seniors from the year prior. That Glenn at Reagan game, that game kind of looks like it might be a game for Glenn to kind of see what kind of team they are. It'll be halfway through the season. It's a road game versus Reagan. We already know Reagan's gonna be pretty good just based on the talent they have there. That seems like a game for Glenn that could kind of maybe not necessarily make or break their season, but kind of tell them which path they're going to go going forward, because they got a lot of tough games right after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge game. By that point, to Mike's point earlier, I mean, you'll know who each team is, their identity, stuff like that. And then you go back to the point that these two played last year at Glenn. It was a 2-point game. Glenn had the game and leading it into the fourth quarter, gave up 2 touchdowns, ended up losing that one and put them under 500. And then it kind of just started tumbling from there. So you put all the points you make, plus the fact that last year it kind of ended up being the table that turned them down the side of the road that they did not really want to go and stumbled down that hill. I think it's going to be not only a game that really can tell them what's going to come in the next few weeks, but it's a game that's certainly just because they want to get that revenge from last year as well, where they lost it just by 2 points.
I like this. I didn't expect Mike and Chase to come in as prepared as they are because I literally told them like 3 hours ago, like, hey, you want to come in and jump in on this? And they are in
Oh,
here.
I knew they'd be prepared.
Yeah, they are
They'd be
prepared
prepared.
and ready to rock. So if you're used to hearing Tobacco Road's coverage of high school football here in the Triad, nobody does it bigger than we do. At least 2 live games every single Friday. There's some times where we're going to have at least 3. I think there's one week where we have 4 going on at the same time. So that's going to be kind of nuts. Somewhere in the middle of the year. I'm going to go a little bit quicker and try to get us through the rest of the TOB schedule. Again, these games are going to be on 96.7 FM, 980 AM. This schedule will be posted on Tobacco Road's Facebook and Twitter after the show concludes. So you'll be able to get to that and be able to save the image in your phone or whatnot so you can see what's going on. September 29th, start getting into the meat of the CPC. Mount Tabor at East Forsyth. That's a 7 o'clock kickoff. October the 6th, Reynolds at Glenn. That's a home game for Glenn. So you'll have Chase and Brett on that one. Myself and Rod will be on the road. I want to say that's the week East Forsyth plays Parkland. So, yeah. October 13th. October 13th. I mean, I'm not trying to throw any shade on Parkland or anything. I know they're going through some things, but I mean, good Lord, the past 2 years, East has put up like 140-something points on Parkland in 2 games. Like, so I'm like, we're just going to put that on the network and just go from there. I think they've had a running clock at the start of the third quarter both years. So it's just, it just is. It is what it is. Parkland hasn't been the same since Samick left a couple years ago. He got them built up a little bit. And then when he left, it just hasn't got back to where he had got them built to. And shout out
They're breaking in yet another new coach.
Yeah, another season. Coach. Linwood retired. The AD, long-term AD, Linwood. What's Linwood's last name? Gerald. He was been there for 40 years or something like that. So shout out to him. And Parkland, man. If I'm 45, I grew up in this area. Parkland back in the day, they would have to play at Bowman Gray, like those Parkland Tabor games or Parkland Glen or when Parkland was rolling, like early 2000s when they had like Jed Bynes and those kids. They were doing their thing. So the talent is there in the area. It's flush in the area, but we'll see what Parkland can do going.
My guess is that Parkland gets better across the football and basketball quicker than slower. I think that they are going to turn things around quicker. They'll have some games where, I mean, if that's not the only game that East Forsyth's going to win by a lot, but Parkland's going to figure it out, sooner than not.
I think so. I mean, we call the Central Piedmont Conference the SEC Triad pretty much because it's usually a pretty gauntlet to get through. Now, last year was a little different. East kind of dominated the whole conference. West was down. Glenn was down. So it kind of it watered down a little bit. But I don't expect West Forsyth with new head coach Kevin Wallace coming in from Northwest Guilford. I don't expect them to be down for long. I don't expect Glenn with Antoine Stevenson running that defense. I don't expect them to be down for long. So they'll bounce back. They'll give us some good games. October 13th, Reynolds at East Forsyth. That's new head coach for RJ Reynolds, Joe Davidiak. I interviewed him on Franchise Players right before we went off for summer break. I want to say he's 26. He may be the youngest head coach in high school football in the state of North Carolina, and he's already been to a couple of stops. So it's not like this is his first job ever, like fresh out of college. He's already been in a couple places, and he's enthusiastic. He's got these kids believing already. Just for me talking to him, Reynolds probably has a couple of years, but they have the most important thing. They have the resources. They have the resources, and they have the ability to kind of build this up. And they're finally getting a stadium. They're finally getting their own football stadium. It won't be ready till I want to say 2024, 2025, something like that. But
yeah, they hit a delay.
Yeah, and that's going to be back there behind the gym, right? Behind Haynes Gym.
It's over closer to Wiley Middle School, or I believe that's right.
Yeah, so like the back end of Haynes Park, I guess.
Yeah.
So I was trying to look at it. I was like, how are they going to fit a football stadium in there? But they'll figure it out. So Reynolds will finally get that. And I've always thought that was a disadvantage for Reynolds and Parkland to not be able to play home football games on their campus, to have to drive to Deaton Thompson to play, especially Reynolds, because you're driving across the whole town to get over there to play. So it's a little bit of a different vibe whenever they go. So when they get their own spot, they'll be cooking, they'll be in business. And then Reynolds is actually on here twice. Like I said, they play East Forsyth October 13th. Then you get a gauntlet of East Forsyth games, rivalry games. October 20th, Glenn at East Forsyth. And then October 27th, West Forsyth at East Forsyth. So East Forsyth ending the season with 3 home games, Reynolds, Glen, and West Forsyth. Overall, East is on here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the slots, which is kind of to be expected with us having the East Forsyth network. We're already there. So, and those games, I mean, to be honest, some of these games they're in couldn't really avoid. East Forsyth, Jack Britt, that's East versus West. They did that last year. That week 2 was Rollsville, and East had them on a running clock started the third quarter. They were up like 50-0 or something nuts. And me and Rod were having to call that from the track. So we were not pleased. Like Rollsville did not give us a place to call that game. And we were on the field, on the track with players in front of us trying to call it. And Chad Delp is actually running out to the sideline to actually see the play. And we would just see like an East running back running free for like 50 yards this way. And then they're going the other direction. There's the East wide receiver going free this way. And we're like, what is going on? Because Rollsville was ranked high at the beginning of the year last year and still finished one of the top teams in the East when the season was over. But that East team last year was just they were just a problem. We'll get
the
to
one that drives that last game, Des, that West Forsyth, East Forsyth game. That's the one that probably causes a little bit of a pain right around here for Willard, because it's not just that it's West Forsyth, and that's a good rivalry game.
Yeah.
But now the mad scientist, Dr. Kevin Wallace. He's now Dr. Wallace, head coach at West Forsyth. The man who single-handedly made me say, I've never seen that before in a high school football game. 3 times in one game last season.
He's going to be fun.
By that last, I don't know if West Forsyth is going to win that game, but I do know that West Forsyth is going to have an identity by week 10.
Well, since we're at the end of the TOB schedule, let's talk a little bit about East Forsyth, because we're going to go over to COG in a bit. We'll fly through that schedule, which is the Grimsley Sports Network, which we've kind of already touched on Grimsley a little bit. East going through some changes. The group of kids that basically the JV was starting 2021, that spring season, because the back-to-back 4A champs, the rising juniors going into senior year was right when COVID hit. We didn't know if we were even going to play football. So they were kind of told to go ahead and go to college. You already got offers, D1, whatever, go get a head start, go leave, go graduate early and go. So a lot of that team left early. Ty Lyles and Amani Marshall, like all them kids that had already won 2 straight. And we were looking at 2020 as that's the three-peat year. Last year they should win it. They're seniors. They've dominated 4A. And then they all left. And basically the JV played 2021 on the varsity schedule. So you had guys like Jalen Rayner and, you know, kids that we grew up, me and Rod especially, we grew with that group for the past 3 years. We saw Jalen Rayner not be able to throw the ball 35 yards down the field in spring 2021. And to see what he was then to where he ended up last year as a finalist for Gatorade North Carolina Player of the Year and All Northwest Player of the Year, Conference Player of the Year. Like he had a season, like, and you could see he had gotten so much stronger just through the weight program over at East Forsyth over 3 years. That whole batch of kids are gone. They were all 3-year starters. RJ Brown, the Martin twins on defense, Matt Joins in the secondary, like all these kids that were huge components of this East team are gone. And I had a brief moment talking to Willard, I think it was in basketball season, where he was like, have you had a chance to process what happened yet after the playoff loss? It was a couple weeks in. I was like, honestly, no, because literally basketball for me started the very next day. So like I never got a chance to really sit down with it. But talking to Rod, we were like, yeah, we kind of felt more attached to that group of kids than normal because we watched them grow over 3 years and saw what they turned into. And then for them to lose to Huff at the end the way they did at home, it reminded me of 2015. It reminded me of them losing to Mallard Creek. It was on that same level of disappointment for the program. But having said all that, the one thing I've learned following East Forsyth the past couple of years and building this network for them is that they don't really reload, or well, no, let me take that back. They don't really rebuild over there. It's not like they're going to have a year where they're 7-4 or something like that, and then all of a sudden they're back up again. They kind of keep the same level of talent with kids coming in, and it's not like they're out like, hey, come here. What I'm seeing is that kids want to come there and inquire about going there, as opposed to them having to go reach out and pull a kid over like other spots might be doing. There's almost like a waiting list of kids trying to get over to play at East Forsyth. And I think a lot of it's because they get a lot of exposure over there and they're going to get coached up and they win a lot, which will, helps. If you want to play college football at the next level, it's not a bad place to go to. One of the guys I wanted to talk about Bryce Baker, the quarterback who transferred over from Walkertown, they're going to have him for 2 years. He's a junior coming in. They won their 2A conference last year in Walkertown. If I'm not understanding, he's got some running mates that came over with him. They all played Pop Warner together as kids. So we've seen this formula before when a group of kids kind of go to a spot. They've been playing with each other since they were 8, 9 years old, and they kind of can transfer that over to wherever they are. And you're able to do that in Forsyth County. You're able to kind of go wherever you want to go. And East has got that now where all those kids I mentioned that just graduated from off of that one loss team from last year that lost to Huff, there's guys are coming in, some at the same level and some maybe even higher than the guy they're replacing. That's a program. That's when you've got something rolling where it's like, okay, we just lost Jalen Rayner. Well, here's this North Carolina commit, Bryce Baker, that's coming in. It's probably going to be a top 3 quarterback in the state junior year. He's just going to come in and fill in for Jalen Rayner. Like, it's stuff like that. Like, it's just, you kind of just go, okay, all right.
But in order for that to click, East Forsyth has longevity. Their secret is not a secret. They've got the best coaching staff, I think. And it's one of the top, and if not the best in North Carolina, just in terms of the program they've implemented and how long they've done it together. That being said, there's a new defensive coordinator in place this season. Aaron Beal stepped away to be with his family, do other things. There's going to have to be a lot of buy-in. They're going to have to, these new guys are going to have to let that coaching staff help them. And that is when Todd Willard's charges are most dangerous.
Yeah.
If they can get the buy-in, they will be dangerous.
And you know, the thing too, I've noticed with East, when they feel slighted, like when they feel like they're at a point now where, like, if you don't expect them to be the conference leader, like the top team in the area, that kind of thing, they take it as a slight. And if they take it as a slight, they can use that as motivation to kind of coach the kids and everything else. So they keep them motivated. It's almost like an Alabama type thing where it's like they find something to get them going and they latch onto it and go with it. And it's awesome watching it when the kids, like when the light comes on, it looks like everything just looks in slow motion. Rod actually mentioned this during a show last year, during the coaches show, where he was asking the kids, you know, what's the toughest game? Who's the toughest opponent? And they were all saying, practice, like during the week. Like, our practices are so hard that by the time we get to Friday, it feels easy. And Rob was like, that's how it felt in '92 when we won the state championship.
Yeah.
Like,
I was just gonna add, when I look at a program like East, from the outside in, when you're a top program, you think of all that pressure. When you're from the outside looking in, can you handle all that pressure? When I think, in fact, from the inside out, you want that pressure to succeed. You want that pressure of they're coming for you, intense practices. I think it keeps you sharp. And like you said, with Baker coming in and makes you a destination, and to have that, I think it just sets you up for even more success. When we're on the outside, we look at that pressure going, is that a good thing to keep having to go after and be the top year after year? But I think from the inside, it keeps you sharp. It keeps you focused. That's at least what I've seen from East the last few years. They don't shy away from that pressure of having to, what maybe you considered earlier, rebuild or reload. It's just, nope, it's another season. It's high expectations. Here we go.
And we're supposed to have Coach Willard on again. We mentioned at the top of the show, you'll hear Bryant Roche here in a bit, and you'll hear me at the end of it saying, stay tuned for Coach Willard. You can leave after that because Coach Willard's not going to be here. He's at church. He's doing Bible study with the family. So I will have him on. We're going to do like a coach's segment in August for high school.
God bless Katie.
So we're going to do that in August. So I will definitely have Coach Willard on franchise players sometime here in August, as well as Coach Brown.
There isn't a soul listening who believes that Todd Willard is involved in the Bible study.
I believed him when he sent the text. It was just, he sent it more like, oh man, Katie just reminded me we got Bible study. So,
I believe that. That's why I was throwing the context out there, but left them to their own devices. No, Darth Vader at church.
You think he's out in the car, like watching this on the TV, like in the church parking lot? He might be.
I haven't gotten a text yet. I'm waiting for it. I am holding this, waiting.
So here's the WCOG schedule, and it's the launch of the Grimsley Sports Network, year one. If you aren't aware, Grimsley has their own sports network now, powered by Tobacco Road Sports Radio. JP Mundy, Mike Fanning will be a part of that. Every home and away football game will be broadcasted in some capacity. Matter of fact, most of it's going to be on WCOG and online at tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. All men and women's basketball games will be as well. And all of those will also be available to you, as well as East Forsyth and Glenn's home stuff on the NFHS network. So you can actually watch these games on NFHS and hear our feed directly into it, right underneath it, lined up perfectly. So you can actually watch it off the subscription of that school. So definitely, if you want to contribute to the school's bottom line, go subscribe to that school's NFHS feed. And now you'll be one of the few that actually have audio underneath your video when you're watching these games, and it'll be directly from Tobacco Road. Real quick, we'll get through the COG schedule because all of it's Grimsley for the most part, except for week 1. We had Grimsley at Mount Tabor week 1 on WTOB. East Forsyth is actually traveling week 1 to Wake Forest, the East Raleigh area. They're taking on Heritage. So open in 2 weeks, me and Rod will be traveling. I might hit you, Rod, with the bus on that one, because either that one or the week after when we go to Fayetteville, that's a little bit of a drive. So East Forsyth at Heritage, that's a 7 p.m. kickoff. That's on 1320 a.m. and 105.3 FM on WCOG. But again, the East Forsyth Sports Network, you can listen to that live online at tobaccoroadsportsradio.com, or you can listen to our feed on the NFHS network. The 25th of August, pretty good one. Guys, Rollsville comes into town in Greensboro to take on Grimsley. And again, to JP's point, we're going to know a lot about these teams after week 3 or week 4, after they get out of non-conference play, because something about the Central Piedmont Conference and the Metro 4A Conference, the past couple of years, they've scheduled some big games, week 2, week 3, right before their bye weeks, just to kind of, I guess, help strengthen the schedule and that kind of thing towards the end of the year with the way they seed. Grimsley got some pretty tough ones those first couple of weeks. So they got Mount Tabor week 1, Rollsville week 2, and then they have to go to Reagan week 3, September the 1st, and then they have their bye. Real quick, guys, starting off with you, Mike, thoughts on the first 3 weeks of the schedule over on COG? Grimsley having some pretty heavy games you guys are going to be starting off with.
Yeah, you're working in a new quarterback who played sparingly last year. It does have some reps, threw for a little over 500 yards, had 8 touchdowns to go along with 4 INTs. So you're working in a new signal caller, but you got enough good pieces around him that if things break down, you got Mitchell Summers, an over a 2,000-yard tailback. I'm going to be curious on how this defense plays. Talking to Ethan Albright, they're already working on this summer. What's the secondary going to look like? It was a good defense last year, a really good defense last year. I think giving up, looking here, they gave up about 22 points a game.
And
they lost a little bit on defense, some seniors. So how's that side of the ball going to look? And I think we're all going to be able to find out together. And that's to echo your point, being able to watch this, watch the live stream on the NFHS network and then have our commentary over the top is just going to be a fantastic way to follow this team on the road. And if you're not making it out to Jameson, if you want to listen to us, it's just going to be a great way to follow this team, because I do think there's going to be some growing pains, especially Rollsville, Mount Tabor. I mean, every team Grimsley's going to play this year has been circled, right? Yeah. I mean, you came a quarter away from winning a back-to-back state title. Everybody's looking at Grimsley. Again, it's early. Grimsley's confident, but there are some questions about this sophomore quarterback in Brandon. I think he'll figure it out. He's a dual threat. He's highly regarded. He's got all these scholarship offers. He's got so many dudes around him that can play. But, what's the defense going to look like? How are they going to get together and really play? Because, boy, again, I agree with you, Dez. This early schedule, these guys are going to be ready to go.
I mean, it actually kind of would surprise me if Grimsley comes out of that like 1-2 or something like that after the first 3 weeks, because I think I just checked Max Preps before we came on. They haven't done it yet, but I'm pretty sure Grimsley's probably going to be ranked number 1 in the state coming out of preseason in 4A. Them, Huff, East, Weddington. Those are the teams I'm looking at in 4A, and all of them are in the West. Like all of them are in the West region. So again, it's just going to be like just huge nonsense of 8 teams that could win the whole thing.
It's the Reagan game that it sticks out to me. I think that these guys, in the CPC and Metro are doing a good job trying to schedule out of conference. But we saw what scheduling Roseville did for East Forsyth last year. They just dropped a bomb. I expect Grimsley to drop a bomb
Yeah.
on Roseville and Mount Tabor. I don't think Mount Tabor is a good matchup dude wise. I think I think Mount Tabor is well coached and they've got some really good athletes on there, but I just think that they're going to be overwhelmed. But that Reagan game, having done that game last season, when Reagan came to Grimsley and almost walked out of there really with a win, and I know that game probably kept Daryl up for a couple of nights. I want to see how, to Mike's point, how far that they developed Faison Brandon, because Reagan's going to be ready. Reagan lost some dudes, but most of their starters, or a lot of their starters, played regularly last season. They know how to win, and their quarterback is going to be even better this year. And they've got a running back who can go. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in that game. That is going to be the playoff out-of-conference game that Darryl Brown wants to play.
That's a huge game for Coach McGee and that Reagan program to kind of announce to the state that, like, yeah, hey, we're here. Yeah, we're in the same conference as East, but we're here too, and we ain't scared of them. We ain't scared of Grimsley. They'll have an opportunity early on. I will let Mike and JP know the thing you really should be looking forward to when you go over there, Reagan's press box. Let me tell you, right last year when me and Rod went over to East Forsyth Reagan, and Reagan, to their credit, their defense might have been the best defense East saw until they saw Huff. That was a fairly close game for most of it until East started pulling away at the end. But the press box, but pre-COVID, East Forsyth and West Forsyth had the best press boxes when it came to food. West Forsyth in particular. West Forsyth didn't even have it in the press box. They had it up in their cafeteria. You had to know where it was. Like someone had to tell you. And you go in there, and there's literally like 30 different types of food in there from different businesses all around Clemens. And it was like a buffet. You want some Domino's, you want some buffalo, you want some wings, you want some barbecue, like all of it's in there. COVID came and took all that away. So a lot of the schools don't really do it anymore. Like East, their press box, they'd have chicken in there and pizza and all kinds of stuff to eat. People bring in stuff like potluck style. That kind of went away because people were coming in the press box that weren't supposed to be there to get food. So they kind of limited that a little bit. We go to Reagan.
Glenn's got stuff. Glenn's got a good.
Glenn has a good setup too. Yeah. They shout out to Blue Naples.
Blue Naples.
Yeah, long time tobacco.
Yeah, that's music to my ears.
Yeah, so you got Blue Naples pizza in there. Blue Naples wings, the best in Kernersville. Shout out to my man G. If you don't know, Blue Naples is renovating, so they're going to be closed a little bit longer than their normal summer break. I believe he had posted on Facebook they're going to be back around like mid-August, so right before this. So Chase, you should get some Blue Naples.
We got to get them open for Chase.
Yeah, we'll get them open. But yeah, look, so we're at Reagan, and like we walk in, and they had probably the best spread in a press box I've ever seen. They had fried fish. They had baked spaghetti. They had like ziti and like fried chicken. It was nonsense. And we walked through.
They went to Southern Family Restaurant next door.
Yeah, they hooked up the whole thing with like everything on their menu. Literally was in there. And I don't know if it was because East was there or if they do that every week. But for your benefit, JP and Mike String on the road, I hope they do it every week so you'll be able to experience
it every week.
Oh God, I might just go to Reagan on our bye week just to go see what's happening.
They don't like you and Rod. They don't like you and Rod. They do like me.
I had a pretty good relationship. Well, Alexa's isn't there anymore, but I had a good relationship with them, and Coach McGee knows me pretty well. We've done some things. So
wait a minute. I just hope that certain people up in the Greensboro area are listening to this, because while the Red Snapper and Darryl Brown have themselves an elite football program, there is one thing blocking them from true elite status, and that is the spread.
Yes, and they've got 2 press boxes. Like they got home and visitors over at Grimsley's side. We'll be on the home side. Everybody else can be on the visitor side, and maybe we convince Ethan to, let's get some food in the press box, man. Let's make that happen. I don't think I've ever seen food in the press box at Grimsley, so. They have water.
They do have Cokes. They have Cokes there, which is very important.
Galore in there, and a refrigerator and everything. So you guys will be well taken care of. Let me blow through the rest because it's all Grimsley's schedule here on the Grimsley Sports Network, their inaugural season. Of course, North Davidson, Walkertown, we touched on that during that bye week when everybody's off. Southeast Guilford at Grimsley, September 15th. Grimsley at Northwest Guilford, September 22nd. This is a Metro Conference play. Western Guilford at Grimsley on the 29th of September. Ragsdale at Grimsley on October 6th, Grimsley at Southwest Guilford on October 13th. Then you got rivalry last 2 weeks of the season, Page at Grimsley on October 20th, and Grimsley at Northern Guilford to finish the regular season on October 27th. Speaking of those rivalries, what do you think about Page? It feels like the past couple years they've been trying to get it back in gear. I remember when I was a kid, the Metro 4A, when I was a kid, like in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, it was like Forsyth and Guilford. So you like Page, Grimsley, East Forsyth, Carver, South Stokes, I'm probably missing a couple. We're all in that group. They were all in that Metro 4A conference. So we, as a kid, Dudley was in it. So we would see Grimsley, Dudley. Like when I was in high school, that was when like Vincent Witt was playing basketball at Dudley, or Brendan Hayward was. I watched him basically shell my East Forsyth team his senior year with like 15 dunks in a game or whatever at Dudley. But now everything's kind of more centralized with, the teams are mainly in their own counties. Page versus Grimsley is one of those rivalries. It's like one of the oldest in the state. Talk to me a little bit about rivalries.
It's always special to do that rivalry game. There's always a good crowd. There's a real hatred between the two schools, which is always fun. I would be a lot more excited had Jerron Blackwell not transferred from Page to Dudley.
Yeah.
Because that's the most dynamic player on Doug Robertson's offense. And Page is going to be good on defense. They're going to tackle immaculately. They're going to be physical, and that's going to keep them in games. Their stumbling block of late has always been trying to develop a consistent offense. And with Blackwell gone, I hope they prove me wrong. And that's an important game for second place in the Metro. The best new rivalry I think is that Grimsley Northern game, and that's the one. That's the one that I'm looking forward to, because we like to mess with Eric Westberg about he is the tag team partner of Dr. Kevin Wallace at West Forsyth. They're best friends. They're also nuts. They're completely nuts. And for you new guys to the area, they're absolutely nuts, and they're going to line up in stuff that you've never seen before, and you've never even seen it in Madden. Okay? And that's just what they do, and they're so good. Westburg and Northern Guilford is so good at scheming up football that he drives other coaches nuts. Just drives them nuts, and it is hilarious.
That's the thing that's going to be
new. He is a football dude.
Have you guys watched?
So I'm looking forward to it.
Have you guys watched the series on Netflix, Quarterback, that Peyton Manning executive produced? Have you watched that yet?
Yeah, I've seen some of that. Yeah.
Okay, so for those who don't know, and it's on Netflix, I'm not really giving anything away, but it basically follows behind the scenes three quarterbacks: Pat Mahomes, Marcus Mariota, and Kirk Cousins across all of last season, 2022. So from preseason all the way to the end of the year. And when JP was talking about those two coaches, it reminded me of the scene where they're talking about Kansas City and how the players kind of have input on what they're going to run. And they were talking about, you remember at the end of the year last year, like week 18, Kansas City did that formation like in the huddle where they like did the do-si-do or the merry-go-round, like before they all broke out. When they broke out, like Pat Mahomes was like way over here, and it was like the wide receiver was at quarterback, and then they did like a double reverse they did a reverse, and Mahomes threw it across the field to the other side, and then the guy got it for a touchdown, but there was a flag called or something on it. It's one of those plays you really only can do once. You can't really do it again. But when JP was just talking about those coaches and them being creative, it immediately brought up an image of the Kansas City team in the huddle doing that. Because like if you're the other team, you're like, what are they doing? Like, what is going on here? And then they just run out, and you don't know where everybody is, and they just go. That sounds like the innovation that we might be seeing from Westburg and from
I texted both of them right after that play was run. And I texted both of them and I said, did you call that play?
Do it. If I saw that in a game, that would be awesome. If I could see that in a game.
Wallace, holy smokes. Wallace went and spilling any tea here because Willard lifted this play. He loved it so much. But he ran this extra point, 2-point conversion like it was nothing. Like it was like there was no deciding factor. He knew he was running this BS. And I looked out on the field, and as a play-by-play guy, I'm supposed to explain the action on the field. And I'm like, well, there's a center, and there's the quarterback, and then everybody else
I know
was
what you're
kind of.
talking about. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, everybody
And
lines
they
up
ran
there.
it. Yeah, and it didn't work. And then he ended up, the next time they scored, they ran it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember.
And then they ran it again.
No, I will say Northwest Guilford last year and the year prior, playing East Forsyth. Last year they had to come to East Forsyth, and East got up like by 14 or so early. But after that, it was a track meet, like Quayshawn Brown this way, and then Tanner Blue's thrown to somebody this way. And it just went back and forth and back and forth. And if you ask Aaron Beal which game bothered him the most last year, regular season wise, it was Northwest Guilford and what they were doing, because they were just doing offensive stuff that you don't see on this level. And now Wallace is in Clemens doing that, and you can hear him every Monday night with JP Mundy at Mossy's for Titans Talk back for season 4. So definitely,
and shout out to that guy. Let's give just a couple more flowers to Wallace, because he's no longer allowed in Boone, because the biggest problem that he had throughout his tenure at Northwest was depth. And they went up to, it was in the middle of that. It was the week we had the ice storm last year. And they finally, were they going to play? Were they not going to play? And Watauga said, why don't you just get in a bus and drive on up the mountain? So he's already cranky. And if you know Coach Wallace, he's cranky. Right?
all these coaches are.
he's a Grinch. Nah, I don't know. Willard's not cranky. He's petty. But anyway, Wallace goes up there, and he's already in a bad mood, and his starting quarterback breaks his wrist.
Oh, that's right.
And they're down 2. He doesn't have a backup quarterback that can execute what's been installed. They're down a couple of 3 scores. He takes his best player, which is Bristol Carter, the best position player, who's a wide out, puts him behind center, and they end up winning the game. And as soon as they get done with that handshake line, they sprint to their buses.
Yeah.
Because the people there were in such shock. That's how good that a Wallace and a Westburg coach team can be if the players have buy-in.
Look at like I'm not going to be shocked if Wes actually has a good season this year, because they do have the one thing that they've always had when Adrian Snow was there, and you should probably know what this is, JP. They got an offensive line. They always have an offensive line. They will move you off the line of scrimmage, and they've got a couple of kids that you interviewed last year that are back as seniors this year, D1 prospects. I think one's already signed someplace. If he uses them the way I think he's going to, Wes might be a problem. And then again,
they got to buy in, Des. Those guys, they've got to buy in. I don't think the West kids know yet how good they can actually be if they'll just trust their head coach and the staff, because the mad scientist he's going to rise up at least once and whoop somebody he's not supposed to.
Oh yeah, I can see that. It might be a team I don't want them to do that too. So we'll see. Real quick, then we're going to turn it over to Bryant. I told these guys on the panel it's going to be about 15 minutes. We end up going about an hour. So that's kind of how it rolls, Mike and Chase. Just kind of get used to it. I'll every time I get you on, I'm like, hey, it's going to be about 15 minutes. And then
it's always an hour or an hour and a half.
Just block an hour out. Like,
I learned, so far in an hour, I've learned I got to change phone plans, because obviously I'm going to be spending a ton of minutes texting these coaches, even after 2-point conversion.
They know.
I guess the biggest takeaway for me is I got to get this data plan set right, So, no, this has been great.
So real quick before I get you guys out of here, give me. And it doesn't even have to be 4A. It doesn't even have to be anybody that's on these schedules. Give me a team in Forsyth or Guilford County that you feel like has the best shot to win a state championship. We do this every year about this time of the year in our absurd, way too early predictions. But give me a team that you think can win a state championship and why. I saw Mike with his hand raised, so we'll let you go first.
I'm going to take the easy one, and I'm going to take the team we're going to be covering in Grimsley. look, this is a team that averaged 43.5 points a game last year, and a lot of those fourth quarters, were playing the backups. They took their foot off the pedal, and a lot of those ball games, through stretches of the season. This team is just loaded with offensive talent. They want track meets. So, as opposing teams, you're going to have to figure out a way to match them score for score. The talent is there to score on the offensive side of the football. Maybe they got a few questions on defense, but can they be better than 43 points a game this year? I think they can. And that's a tall task. When you got an offense that can come in and generate a lot of points, that just makes good things happen. They got a dual threat quarterback. High school football is just another layer of complexity to go ahead and stop. Their defense was great. It was a team that was a quarter away from winning the state title last year. I think you definitely keep your eye on the Whirlies this year. They have the hype. They're feeding off it. I mean, that's the other thing. It seems like they're ready, excited for this challenge. I don't think this is a season where they're going to kind of go in going, I hope everything works out. I think they're practicing right now to go ahead and say, hey, we're taking care of business. This is our year. They had that attitude when I met with them so far. We'll see how the Jamboree in this early season goes. I'm looking at the Whirlies, though. They got the talent on the offensive side of the football to put up a lot of points, and that's a dangerous thing to have in high school football.
They are loaded. They kind of remind me of East last year, where they had a lot of kids that were juniors or sophomores that have the reps. They've got the talent. They've got the offers and everything, and it's their senior year. It's like, if we weren't going to do it before, this is the year we're going to do it because we're all here. Guys came in. We've got the talent. We got the coaches. Like, we got everything we need. We just got to go out and do the job. So Grimsley's not a bad pick at all. Chase, if you had to choose any team with any classification, so 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, in Forsyth or Guilford County, and Reedsville, you can count Reedsville too. Who would you say has the best shot to come home with a state championship here in December?
I have to agree with Mike. I mean, Grimsley is a super talented team. You bring in Faison Brandon, who's already got some reps at quarterback, who's uber talented with 2-star wide receivers. That offense is going to be tough to beat. Mike brought up all the numbers. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory that this team's going to be tough to beat on offense. They bring back 3/5 of their offensive line too, so they'll have some good talent there that's used to doing what they're doing in the limelight. And then, typically they do have a good defense. Maybe it's not going to be as good as usual this year, but nonetheless, they'll come around. They'll be good on both sides of the ball. I think they're going to be tough to beat. And when you're that close to a state championship less than a year ago, you want it bad, especially, you win it that spring season and come back, you get close again. You're going to want to get in the regular season because, you always question those COVID seasons, whether it's up in the big leagues or down in the high school levels.
It's a good point that we kind of tippy-toed around that the quote-unquote asterisks on that season. It's a state title to me, but
I agree.
Either way, though, yeah, I totally get that sentiment, and I kind of get the vibe that Grimsley wants another one because another one would kind of put them on the level of some of these other teams we're talking about in the Triad in terms of notoriety and getting the job done. JP, if you could choose any team, any class, Guilford, Forsyth, and Reedsville, where would you who would you pick to have the best shot to win a state championship?
Well, first of all, Reedsville's got a brand new turf field.
I saw that.
So they're the class of they're the class of their class.
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned DUD LEY, Dudley High.
Oh.
Dudley is going to be the class of their class.
Yeah. When
it comes to 4A, yes, the low-hanging fruit, Grimsley, is the number one. I agree with the guys. Grimsley is the choice. However, if certain people in Kernersville buy in, and you can replace the linebacker situation somewhat seamlessly,
it's going to be hard. RJ did
and you're going to have a 1A and 1B, and hopefully you have 2 Triad teams making a deep 4A run. But right now, until somebody proves otherwise, the Grimsley Whirlies are the class of 4A around here. Now, that being said, pay close attention. I don't think you can't write them off, even if they lose to Grimsley week 3, whatever. But Reagan has a very, very good defense. They have a quarterback whisperer who has a great quarterback. So good that he began his quarterbacking career already having baseball offers. Well, now he's got football offers. Okay, so I think if there's a dark horse, Reagan is there. I think they've had some bad luck. They've had some inconsistency, but I think that they're building up. I think West is maybe a year or two away. But man, all of this stuff we've talked about tonight depends so much on the kids putting in the work in the summer. Who's shown up for workouts? Who showed up at the weight room? If the attendance at Grimsley, hypothetically, because this ain't happening, but if Grimsley's weight room attendance isn't any good, then they've got all the dudes. Well, how good can those dudes be?
Yeah, that ain't happening anymore. Yeah, that's
not happening at all. And I'm not forget, since this is the first day of high school football season, I'm contractually obligated, if you'll recall, to say that Northern Guilford is terrible. They are the worst. Eric Westberg is the most mediocre coach ever, and you guys
you gonna have Coach Westberg texting me like at 10 o'clock tonight? Like, what is this?
No, he's every year it's the same thing. Don't tell anybody we're any good. They're terrible.
So last year taught me a very valuable lesson, because at this point last year I was feeling myself and feeling my alma mater in terms of what I thought East was going to do. And they got pretty close to it. But the one thing I learned is that these kids are human. This is a long season, and it only takes one night or one injury or, something to happen for it to fall apart. And that's kind of what happened last year. I'm not going to just sit here and be a homer and be like, East is going to make it to the state championship, blah, blah, blah. I will say this. I do think that whoever comes out of the 4A West will be from Guilford or Forsyth County. Like last year, Charlotte didn't get there. I feel like Grimsley and East Forsyth's programs, to a certain extent, have surpassed some. And I know it's funny to say because East has lost a huff the past 2 years in the playoffs, but I feel like overall, I would bet money on Grimsley or East Forsyth to get out of the West before I would bet on really anybody else. And to be honest, Grimsley was the 1 seed last year, and you don't have to play all these teams. It's a loaded Western region. You don't have to play them all though. And by the time Grimsley got to the West Regional Final, the team that they ended up playing was Weddington. I don't think any of us had Weddington penciled in there to be in the Western Regional Final. I actually, honestly, I think we were looking for a Grimsley East Forsyth Western Final, which would have been a repeat from 2019. So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for East Forsyth Grimsley Western Regional Final. I can't pick that, but that's what I would, in a dream world for high school football, especially the West, that would be the best matchup, I would think.
Desmond, it's fun to do these preseason predictions and kind of throw numbers out there and pull for our teams. We're not in those locker rooms. We're not in those huddles. We don't know how those teams are gelling. I think what we do at this time of the year is we kind of buy into these systems and these cultures. And we've seen that history now with Grimsley. We've seen it with East. We've seen it with Dudley. All these teams we've talked about tonight. Yep. We're kind of buying in more maybe to the coaches and to the system than we are how the offense looks or how the defense looks, for instance. So, I mean, speaking to everyone's point, we'll find out soon enough what these teams are made of. Right now, I'm kind of looking at my pick as going, I know Brown's building on what Grimsley already had in place, and I guess I'm buying into that system.
No, I agree. That's all you can do, especially now with kids at one school 1 year and then they're another school the next year. Sometimes it's hard to even know who's on the roster at this point in July in terms of like, okay, this kid is where? Oh, he was at Dudley, now he's over here. Oh, he's here, now he's at Dudley. Like all this movement around, especially in Forsyth County, like trying to figure out who all came here and who all left there and went to all these places. It makes it kind of hard to pick. But if you know the programs that these kids are flocking to, that they're trying to get to, it makes it a little bit easier to kind of gauge the talent level that they probably have there based on what they had previously. And knowing a school like East Forsyth or Grimsley, Dudley, they're going to keep that same level of excellence that they're used to on the gridiron. And it's crazy. We hadn't really talked a whole lot about Dudley in this show, but I've always said this, and I've said it for the past couple of years. Dudley is a 4A school stuck in 3A, and they know it. So they like to bully everybody because they're not supposed to be in 3A. I don't care what anybody tells me. That is a 4A school, and they were playing a 3A schedule. And to be honest,
great staff.
They have a great staff, and it goes back to what JP said. Look at all these teams we have talked about, and look at their coaching staffs. For the most part, they all stay. Like they're there for years. Like, it was a shock to us when Beal left East. Like, I think we just assumed he was going to be there forever. And he stepped down. That's going to be a huge question.
He's going to call me at 2:00 in the morning. I'm just thinking about that.
He's still going to be around. Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. He'll still be around. As a matter of fact, I expect to see him walking around week 1. I expect him to drive out.
By the way, Chase and Mike, just to let you know, the Mecklenburg County media hates us, except for the folks at Mooresville. Mooresville is a wonderful place.
Mooresville's excellent. Great hospitality.
Mooresville is a wonderful place.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
Everybody else hates us.
The media doesn't hate us. It's the fans of the schools down there. They hate us because they
know. And the administrators running the games. Yeah.
Moving forward, I'm not giving out my number. It's going to be a P.O. box. If you want to complain, it'll just go right into the shredder. I'm not giving out my number, so I really won't know who's loving it or who's not. I think I've made that decision pretty clear tonight.
Make a dummy Gmail account or something. Just direct all the stuff there.
Stone and I trashed the schools to the west of us last year. We enjoyed that. That was so good.
So, and Ryan will be back with his playoff time. Ryan Stone, as you guys know, my Joe Buck of Tobacco Road Sports Radio. He's in Virginia doing football games on Friday nights, but once that concludes, he'll be with us during playoff time. Guys, anything you want to say in closing here before I turn it over to Bryant and he talks a little bit about some quarterbacks and some wide receivers to look out for going into the season? I
just didn't know, Des, and not trying to step on any toes, about Grimsley's coaches show.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier on at the beginning, we're still in the process of narrowing down where it's going to be. Actually, Ryan's going to be hosting that show. So Ryan will be hosting the coaches show for Grimsley. I don't want to say exactly where it's going to be. I have an idea of where it's going to be. Just know it's probably going to be downtown Greensboro, and it'll be a pretty fun deal for Grimsley. I don't have any worries about them bringing in a crowd. That's going to be the test, to be honest. Like, for me, if I see Grimsley bringing in crowds, like for their coaches show, the way East brings in crowds for theirs. And JP, you've subbed for me a couple times on those East coaches shows. They are a different beast, like altogether. Like, it's like walking into a club. Like when you go to those things, there's like
nobody cares about that show. Everybody cares about Titans talk on Monday night.
Live from Mossy's out on the deck, and with Kevin Wallace in the house, our goal is to build that up too. So if you're a West Forsyth fan, parent, alumni, player, student, come out to Mossy's on Monday nights. We're outside. The speakers out there. We're having a good time. They're interviewing the coaches and the players. So definitely come out and join us there. The Nest with Todd Willard is now at Monte Del Rey in Kernersville beside Planet Fitness, back behind McDonald's. So right there, really behind J. Peppers. On Tuesday nights live, 7:30. Me and Rod Funderburk there. And then the Glenn, the Deepwater coaches show with Coach Stevenson and Glenn. That was Wednesday nights last year. I believe it's going to be the same this year. You'll have Chase hosting that. And then, of course, the Grimsley show. I'll give you some notes on that as well. I don't want to do it as late as Thursday, and they probably don't want to either on a Thursday night. So we'll figure that out. Yeah, so that might have to be Monday. I don't know. We'll figure something out. But that's all for that. Appreciate these guys coming in for the hour-long 15-minute segment that we just rolled through. Thank you guys for being way more prepared than I expected you to be. Everything sounded great. I'm going to turn this over to – earlier today I had a conversation with Bryant Roche from the Greensboro News and Record and the Winston-Salem Journal, where he basically got a chance to discuss some of the players he's been spotlighting in his articles the past couple of weeks, previewing the 2023 high school football season. Let's get to him. Let's do this. I'm going to transition this over to him real quick as I pull these guys off the set. Just bear with me just a minute. You're watching and listening to the 2023 high school football schedule release show here on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com.
Just Blaze.
Welcome back into the 2023 high school football schedule release show powered by Tobacco Road Sports Radio, your home for Triad Sports and definitely your home for high school football. A minimum of 2 live games every Friday evening. As you know, I'm your host, Desmond Johnson. JP will be back in a little bit. A couple surprises here in a little bit. But before we get back into looking at the schedules and everything, I had to bring in my man Bryant Roche here from the Greensboro News and Record and the Winston-Salem Journal. He is one of the new Preps beat writers, taking over for the infamous Joe Serrera, who retired at the end of last school year. down in Florida. Shout out to Joe. Just celebrated a 30-year anniversary with his wife. Just saw that on Twitter. So I hope Joe's enjoying retirement down in beautiful Florida and getting it in. We miss his knowledge and expertise. But Bryant is in the house, ready to fill those huge shoes from Mr. Severo. What's going on, Bryant? How are you doing?
Oh man, I'm doing well. Thank you, Desmond. Thank you, JP. I know you guys have always been supporters of our work, and ready for my first football season in the Triad. So chomping at the bit to talk about it.
Let's dive into it. I wanted to dive into the offensive side of it. You've been writing a series of players to watch that you guys can go and find at greensboro.com or journalnow.com in the sports section, where basically you've highlighted some players to keep an eye on going into the 2023 season. I wanted to focus on three positions in particular. We'll hit them pretty quick. Let's start off with the position that just runs it all, quarterback. I literally just finished watching quarterback, the new series that's on Netflix. Definitely go check that out. It's kind of like a behind the scenes thing from last year in the NFL that followed Kirk Cousins, Pat Mahomes, and Marcus Mariota like throughout the season, and really good, especially with no TV on pretty much right now. Go check that out. But we got some talent at quarterback here in the Triad. Give me a couple of guys that you're keeping an eye on at the quarterback position in the Triad this upcoming 2023 season.
Oh man, well, for anybody that has had a chance to take a peek at this list that I compiled recently, I'll start off by saying there's a lot of firepower and even some good guys that were, on the cutting room floor. I mean, this is a good quarterback group. And I think starting off, I know a lot of your guys are in tune with East Forsyth. We've had a bunch of transfers, in different parts of the Triad, but I think the guy that probably people are talking about the most, a guy, Bryce Baker, Walkertown transfer that is committed to North Carolina. Very talented guy. Seen some film on him from Walkertown. Had a big impact in terms of that program and the success that they've had in recent memory. Now going up to 4A, and really a talented guy for East Forsyth. They obviously missed out on a guy. Well, how do I put this? They lost the All Northwest Offensive Player of the Year, but they found a guy who is gonna fit those shoes.
Yeah, we like to say, everybody knows I'm the voice of East Forsyth athletics at this point. We kind of like to say over there that they don't really rebuild on the football side. It's just like next man up, because we've gone through a couple of cycles now where we've seen classes of kids come through East. We've been calling East Forsyth games now since 2018. So we've seen it where a group comes through, they have a lot of success, and a lot of them end up leaving due to graduation off the D1 schools and everything. And we're like, man, how are they gonna replace this group of kids that just went through here? And then the next group comes in, and you're just like, oh my gosh! Like me and Rod remember the COVID spring 2021 season. Where East was kind of down because all the kids from the back-to-back state title teams had left. They all told them to leave early. We didn't know if we were going to play football. So it was basically their JV out there. And Jalen Rayner was the starting quarterback as a sophomore. But he should have still been on JV. And we were literally watching from the press box wondering if this kid was going to make it because he couldn't throw the football more than 35 yards in the air. Like it literally, to see him go from that to where he ended up last year, senior year, Gatorade State Player of the Year nominee, All Northwest Player of the Year offensively, now at Arkansas State. That tradition continues at quarterback at East Forsyth with Bryce Baker coming in. Who else you got over on the quarterback side, maybe over in Guilford County that you're looking at?
Guys in Guilford County. Well, Tanner Ballou was the Metro 4A Conference Offensive Player of the Year last season. He comes back at Northwest with Trenton Cloud, a very good wide receiver. He'll have him back. We also have Andrew Atmore from Dudley. Really impressed with him, and they are going to have a lot of weapons. between returning guys and transfers. Dudley, they're gonna to spread the ball around. They've got a lot of guys that they can go to. That offense is going to be very explosive. Some of the guys that I would maybe put, I guess, in that upper tier, so to speak, Faison Brandon over at Grimsley. He shared snaps last year, but he's going to be the guy this year. Honestly, the numbers, I mean, he completed 72% of his passes last year in the I guess limited time he had. He played more often earlier in the year, but he's going to have two of the best wide receivers to work with. Also coming back in Terrell Anderson and Alex Taylor, two Power 5 receivers. Those guys are, two of the best, and you add in the fact that he's going to have a great running game, 3 returning O linemen, and a guy in Mitchell Summers who ran for over 2,100 yards last year. So he's going to be in a good situation. He's also got Division I interest already, and that's without playing a full season or whatever. The quarterback Faison. He's going to be surrounded by a great group of guys, a great situation over there at Grimsley. So I think that he's really in a great position to thrive. Some other guys, and another note, Jemias Ferrer over at Southern Guilford will not be playing football this year. We had him on our list of quarterbacks, but after the fact, he announced that he's just going to focus on basketball going forward. A talented athlete. I mean, he was one of the best basketball players in the Triad this past season. So that's probably an important note. We thought he was going to be one of the best quarterbacks, and obviously a great help for a new coach and Coach Boykin over at Southern. But they're going to have to figure that position out now without their guy. Some other notes, some other guys. Reidsville, I think everyone knows that's the football capital of North Carolina, as they call it.
Sir.
They've got a good one in Al Lee returning. He's also going to have a bunch of weapons. Kendry Harrison is going to be
that's the tight end, the 6'7" tight end.
He's a tight end that can do anything. And in addition to his big body, they're also going to have some other guys. Harrison's cousin, Deontay Neal, actually the high school extra basketball player of the year, is going to be a weapon for them as well. They've got Flip, Kayshawn Flip, and they call him Flip over there, though. He's going to be a great weapon. So Reidsville, looking at their schedule as well, you have to think that Reidsville is one of the teams that comes to mind in terms of state championship contenders, most likely team to win the state championship, etc. In my mind.
I'm in I probably shouldn't be, but I'm in a high school Facebook football group, and there's a lot of Cleveland County in there. So like Shelby, Kings Mountain, like all these teams, like they just talk. And whenever Reidsville comes up, they're just like dismissive. I'm like, Reidsville's got like 23 state titles or something nuts. Literally, we play a game in the middle of the year on the rundown when we go through a high school scoreboard on Saturday morning. And it's called "How many points did Reidsville score last night?" And usually it's like once they get in the conference, it's like 50-3 or some nonsense like every week, and we'll be like, "Oh, they put a 60 burger up on somebody last night." So Reidsville definitely a school we keep an eye out on. We don't get out there because it's kind of out of our range in terms of where we do our games. We kind of stay in Guilford and Forsyth, but if they get to a state championship round this year, we might end up doing that game in Chapel Hill. Got Bryant Roche on the line with us here from the Greensboro News and Record and Winston-Salem Journal. You can follow him on Twitter at @BRoachSports. real quick, Bryant, tell me a little bit about the wide receivers in the area. It feels like, especially the past couple of years, there's been a flux of like 4-star, 3-star wide receivers just in Guilford and Forsyth County. Give me a couple of names at the wide receiver position that you feel like are going to break out, or not breakout seasons, but have dominant seasons here in 2023.
So I already talked about a couple of them. Obviously, the two guys at Grimsley, Cloud at Northwest, the bevy of guys that are at Dudley. CJ Neely is transferring from Smith to Dudley, or already has, I should say. He's going to be a big name transfer-wise. And Shamarius Peterkin, also known as Snook, had an interesting season last year at Mount Tabor, had to play quarterback a good bit, actually. He's expected to stay home a little more at wide receiver this year, so we'll get to see what he can do. Obviously, a big-time basketball player as well, but he's got offers from Georgia, Penn State. I mean, this guy's an athlete. So for those in Spartan country, Snook will definitely be a guy to look for. And his brother will be just graduated. So maybe he'll get the ball a little more, actually, with his brother being now gone. And it sounds like the people in Tabor country are pretty excited about this season. We've got some other guys. I mentioned the Dudley guys. I mean, Nasir Newkirk, Cordell Bartley. Everyone from Dudley knows that they've got a great track tradition. State runner-up this past spring, and you know when you watch the Rocky film, Mick takes him out to the farm and he's chasing the chicken or whatever.
Yeah.
This team's got greasy speed, let me tell you.
Yeah, Dudley. That's another thing too in that high school football group I shouldn't be in on Facebook, where some of the 3A schools like down in Charlotte, like West Charlotte or Kings Mountain, some of those schools, AC Reynolds moved down to 3A from 4A between the past 2 school years. And for some reason, they just ignore Dudley. And I'm like, Dudley is a 4A school trapped in 3A. Like, they literally should be a 4A, like in 4A West with all the rest of us fighting each other, but they're not. They're in 3A, and they'll be there until the realignment. Was it 2026? I think when the realignment happens. I think we got a couple more years before the state moves to this minimum of 7 different classes, and in that, Dudley would probably be in 6A, 5A, 6A, probably right along with East Forsyth and a couple of other 4A schools that are here in the area. So Dudley, they're always a threat to get pretty far. Bryant, real quick before I let you go, just off the top of your head, preseason, give me, as we stand here today, middle of July 2023, give me your top 3 teams that you feel like have a chance to win a state championship from what you've seen so far in terms of talent.
Top 3, okay. Gosh, and I know there's so many players that I didn't even have time to run into just because there's so much talent in this area.
Yeah.
My top 3 teams right now, as we speak, I will say Grimsley. I'll say Dudley, and I'll say East Forsyth. As we speak, my top 3 from what I've kind of gathered in this moment, I'll say those 3 are my top 3 right now.
I think Grimsley is the top most preseason polls in 4A for the state, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's between them and Huff from what I've seen so far. East has been up there. I've seen them ranked top 5 mainly most preseason polls, just because most people don't know exactly what they're going to see. Yeah, they just kind of know the program's going to keep trucking. And Dudley, I've seen them pretty high as well. So yeah, Grimsley is loaded. We did the state championship game last year against New Bern that they lost in. But it feels like the entire team is back, except for the quarterback from last year, and Brandon will be taking his spot, like you said. So they got talent all over the place on that offense in particular. and defense. They're stacked. So I'm kind of in the back of my head as I sit here and know that we've got an East Forsyth Sports Network and a Grimsley Sports Network that's launching this year. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, in November, are we going to get an East Forsyth Grimsley Western Regional Final? Because that's what we wanted last year. Didn't get it.
Yeah, it's
kind of feels like that. They're steam.
I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll roll the ball out and play.
Yeah.
And we got Coach Willard. We got Coach Willard on from East Forsyth in just a bit, and he don't want to hear any of that in July. So.
Oh yeah, no, they always say don't put bulletin.
Yeah, they don't want none of that right now. Yeah, we just trying to get preseason. Appreciate you coming on. Follow Bryant on throughout the rest of the year during the football season for analysis and notes and articles on Twitter at @BRoche Sports. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we'll have him on the Joe Serrera chair. I think that's what we're going to call it, the Joe Serrera chair, where he's the high school football
honorary title
on franchise players. Usually we'd have that on the third segment during football season. It would just lead you right into the game. So I think Bryant's going to assume that chair. So appreciate you stopping by, brother, and we'll definitely be in touch soon.
All right. And thank you again, Desmond. Thank you, JP, for being a supporter of what we do. And thank you for having me on the program.